All right, here's a question for anyone watching this morning who's married or maybe in a long-term relationship. If I were to ask you to imagine the person that you thought you'd end up with, is it the person that you're currently with? Or is it the one who got away? Exploring the one who got away is part of what lit the fires of inspiration for best-selling author Jodi Picoult and her new novel. It is called The Book of Two Ways. It's about an Egyptology student turned death doula, and Jodi Picoult is joining us this morning to tell us about it. Nice to see you again.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Let's start with the premise of this novel. Intriguing.
Sure.
The seed of it, I understand, was sown in part when an ex of yours showed up to one of your book readings about a decade ago. What happened?
Well, that wasn't quite the seed. The seed actually began when my son was an Egyptology student at Yale and started translating the Book of Two Ways, which is a true ancient Egyptian funerary text. And I thought, that's a great title for a novel. And I sort of combined that with this thought about the one that did get away. I had an ex who showed up out of the blue at an event. I looked up, I saw him, looked back down, and he was gone. And he had heard my voice being broadcast around a bookstore and came to check it out. And, I got in touch with him. I hadn't seen him in years. And we exchanged emails, and that sadly, that was the end of that. I was very happily married, so nothing was going to go on. But it did make me wonder, why do we still have these very visceral feelings even years after a relationship ends? I don't think there's anyone who hasn't wondered what their life might have been like if they'd taken a different path.
Well, and that's what this book is about. So the novel opens with a plane crashing. The main character, Dawn, the plane is going down. Her life is flashing before her eyes. And it's not her husband she thinks about. It's a man from a few years ago. Who is Dawn?
Right. So, when people have a near-death experience, they imagine the things that are important to them. But she doesn't see her husband or her daughter or her life as a death doula in Boston. She imagines a moment from 15 years ago when she was an Egyptology grad student and she was in love with another Egyptology grad student who now is actually leading the dig for that university 15 years later. And so when the plane lands and she survives, she has a decision to make. Does she go back to her old life or does she pick up where she left off?
And, you mentioned that your son was translating this ancient text, which actually does exist, the Book of Two Ways. Tell us a little bit more about what's in it.
Sure. So the Book of Two Ways is an ancient Egyptian funerary text that was found in the coffins of nobles in the Middle Kingdom. And the reason it's so famous is because it is the first known map of the afterlife. There was a water route and a land route. And as long as the deceased had the right information from spells that were written in hieroglyphs all around the coffin, then the deceased could take either that land route or that water route and wind up in the field of offerings, which is the ancient Egyptian version of heaven. So I love that metaphor. I love the idea that no matter what path you take, you might still wind up where you're supposed to be. And that metaphorically feeds into the novel.
I know there are hundreds of people who are watching right now who are right now thinking about that person who might have got away. Your character is also a death doula. And one of the things I love about your books is you do a lot of research even before you start writing. Tell me about your research this time.
I was very fortunate because I was able to shadow a hospice chaplain in Texas for a week, which meant that I got to spend time at the bedsides of people who were dying. And one of the first things that you realize is that when you are at someone's bedside and they don't have a lot of time left, it's a real privilege to spend that time with them. You also realize two things. Nobody expects to die, not even the people who have terminal diagnoses. They think, what do you mean I didn't have more time? And nobody wants to be remembered the way they are at the end when they're sick or frail. They want to be remembered for who they used to be. And many of those last interactions at a bedside are about them giving you a story to carry away in your hands. One of the nice resonances in this book is that part of a person for the ancient Egyptians was your name. Your soul, your body, your shadow, and your name. And as long as your name lives on in someone else's thoughts, you're still alive.
Interesting. A lot of people thinking about somebody else maybe today. Jodi Picoult, thanks for joining us this morning. The book is called The Book of Two Ways.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching. If you like this, be sure to subscribe here.
And you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.